"That's not your arthritis cream," my daughter-in-law Margot said quietly. Her eyes met mine with something I couldn't quite place. Fear? Guilt? I was holding the familiar amber jar in my bathroom, reading the label for the 100th time that morning. My hands had started to ache again, badly, the kind of ache that made me grip the sink edge just to stand. I'd been using this cream for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of increasing pain instead of relief. I set the jar down slowly, carefully. My fingers went rigid around the ceramic edge of the sink. Something was very wrong. The cream smelled different than usual. Sharper, chemical. Not the gentle lavender scent I'd grown accustomed to over the past 8 months. I'd bought this exact brand, this exact type, for nearly a year now. Dr. Morrison had prescribed it specifically for my rheumatoid arthritis. It was expensive. Insurance barely covered it. But it worked. Until it didn't. That morning, I'd noticed my hands were worse than they'd been in years. The inflammation had spread from my knuckles to my wrists. I could barely hold my coffee mug. I'd assumed my condition was progressing. That the medication my rheumatologist prescribed wasn't strong enough anymore. That I was getting older, and my body was simply failing me in new ways. I was 62 years old. I'd made peace with decline. But something in Margot's voice stopped me from accepting that narrative. I turned to face her. She stood in my bathroom doorway, still in her work clothes from the hospital where she was a nurse. Margot had always been competent, organized, the kind of woman who kept my son Derek organized. They'd been married for 7 years. I'd never had reason to distrust her, but her face right now told me I should start. "What do you mean that's not my cream?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Thin, uncertain. She didn't answer immediately. She stepped inside the bathroom and closed the door behind her. We were alone in my house. Derek was at work. My youngest son Marcus was in his apartment across town. My ex-husband Richard had moved to Florida years ago. It was just me and Margot in this moment, and whatever she was about to tell me. "I noticed something 3 weeks ago," she said. She reached past me and picked up the jar. Her nurse's hands turned it over carefully, examining the label. "When I came to help you with your grocery shopping, I saw the old cream in your trash. The one from before. It was only half empty. You usually use a jar for at least 5 or 6 weeks." I watched her face. She was choosing her words carefully, a habit from her nursing work. She was trained to deliver difficult information without alarming people unnecessarily, but her jaw was tight. Her breathing was controlled. She was alarmed. "I asked Derek about it," she continued. "He said his mother must have run out early, that you'd switched brands or something. But then I thought about it more. And I started paying attention to your hands. How much worse they've been getting. How you've been complaining more about pain, about stiffness, about inflammation." "My condition is progressing," I said. "Dr. Morrison warned me it might. Some people's arthritis gets worse over time." "Yes," Margot said. She looked at me directly. Her eyes were dark, serious. "Some people's arthritis does get worse, but Danyuna, I need you to smell this cream. Really smell it. Tell me if it smells like the ones you used before." I took the jar from her, unscrewed the lid. The smell hit me immediately. Sharp, acrid, almost like cleaning supplies. Like something that should be used on tile floors, not human skin. I'd been rubbing this on my hands 3 times a day for 3 weeks. Massaging it into my joints, into the thin, sensitive skin of my inner wrists, where it would absorb directly into my bloodstream. "Oh my God," I whispered. "I wanted to be sure before I said anything," Margot said. "So I took a sample to work. I had one of the chemistry techs analyze it. Danuna, that's not your prescribed arthritis cream. It's a mixture of caustic chemicals, sodium hydroxide, calcium hypochlorite. Other compounds I don't even recognize. It's literally cleaning solution, industrial-grade cleaning solution. The bathroom tilted. I reached for the counter. My fingers found the cool porcelain, and I held on. My mind was moving too slowly to process what she was saying. Someone had replaced my medication with cleaning chemicals. Someone had deliberately put something toxic on my skin, on purpose, with intention. Who? I asked. My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. I don't know yet, Margot said. But we need to figure it out, and we need to document this. You need to see a doctor? Today. You need to have your skin examined. We need photographs. We need medical records. Because, Danuna, if someone in your family did this intentionally, this is a crime. In your family? Those words hung in the air between us like a physical thing. A barrier, an accusation. Because of course it had to be my family. Who else had access to my bathroom? Who else knew about my arthritis cream? Who else would have reason to want to hurt me? I spent the rest of that morning in a fog. Margot drove me to the urgent care clinic. The doctor there was a young man named Dr. Chen, who took one look at my hands and immediately referred me to the hospital dermatology department. He said the chemical burns were consistent with prolonged exposure to caustic substances. He said I was lucky I hadn't had a severe allergic reaction. He said I needed to file a police report. By afternoon, I was sitting in a police station, giving a statement to a detective named Simmons. He was in his 50s, with the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd heard many terrible stories. He listened to my account without interrupting. He took notes. He asked me to describe everyone who had access to my house, everyone who knew about my medication, everyone who might have had reason to hurt me. That's when I realized I had no idea who the person was. My son Derek had a key. My son Marcus had a key. My sister-in-law Vivian had a key for emergencies. My friend Patricia, who checked on me twice a week, had a key. My cleaning service had a key. The list went on and on. In my 62 years of life, I'd accumulated a lot of people who knew where I lived. A lot of people who could get inside my home without my knowledge. We'll need to interview all of them, Detective Simmons said. And we'll need to secure that jar of cream as evidence. Has anyone else touched it since you discovered it wasn't legitimate medication? My daughter-in-law, I said. Margot Lawrence. She's the one who figured it out. We'll need to talk to her, too, he said. He closed his notebook. In the meantime, I'd advise you to change your locks. Keep your doors locked. Don't let anyone into your home unless you're absolutely certain who they are. I left the police station feeling hollowed out, like something vital had been removed from inside me. I'd spent my entire life trusting people, opening my doors, assuming the best of others, and someone had used that trust to poison me, literally, to replace my medication with chemicals that burned my skin, to make me suffer, to make my condition worse. Margot drove me home in silence. When we pulled into my driveway, she turned to me before I got out of the car. I need to tell you something else, she said. I didn't want to say it in front of the police. Not yet, but I think you need to know. I looked at her, waited. I've noticed Derek being secretive lately, she said. He gets phone calls he takes in the other room. He closes his laptop when I come near it. He's been talking to his brother Marcus a lot. Private conversations. When I ask him what's going on, he says it's just work stuff. But Daniuna, Derek works in accounting. Marcus works in real estate. They don't have overlapping professional interests. My stomach dropped. You think Derek did this? I think Derek might be involved, Margot said carefully. I don't know what's going on, but I know something is, and I know my husband has been acting strange for the past month. Ever since you mentioned to him that you were considering updating your will. I'd mentioned my will to Derek 3 weeks ago. I'd been thinking about it because I was getting older. I wanted to make sure my affairs were in order. I'd told Derek I was planning to divide my estate between him and Marcus equally. My house, my savings, my retirement accounts, everything split 50-50. Derek had seemed fine with it at the time. He'd nodded and said that sounded fair, but that was 3 weeks ago. Right around the time my arthritis cream had been replaced with chemicals. I don't want to believe my son would do this, I said. I don't either, Margot said, but I want you to be careful. I want you to protect yourself. Until we know for sure what's happening, I think you should assume that nothing is what it seems. Over the next week, the police investigated. They interviewed Derek. They interviewed Marcus. They interviewed Vivian and Patricia and the cleaning service. They took statements from everyone who had access to my house, and then, on a Thursday afternoon, Detective Simmons called me with an update. We found something, he said. We reviewed security footage from a hardware store 3 miles from your house. We found Derek Lawrence purchasing industrial cleaning chemicals on the date we believe the cream was replaced. He paid cash, but the store had security cameras. It's definitely him in the footage. My son, my older son, the one I'd raised, the one I'd paid for college, the one I'd helped with his down payment on his first house. He had deliberately purchased chemicals to replace my medication. He had done this knowing it would hurt me. There's more, Detective Simmons said. We found emails between Derek and Marcus. They've been discussing your will, discussing how much faster your death would be if your condition got worse, discussing how they could speed up the timeline. They were planning to make it look like your arthritis had progressed to the point where you needed full-time care. And then, at some point, they were planning to convince you to change your will, to leave everything to them, to remove any charitable donations or bequests you might have been considering. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The phone felt like it was burning in my hand. Mrs. Lawrence? Detective Simmons said. Are you there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. We're going to arrest Derek, he said. We have enough evidence for attempted assault with a caustic substance. We're working with the prosecutor's office to see if we can add charges related to the conspiracy to commit elder abuse. But I wanted you to hear it from me first. After I hung up the phone, I sat in my living room for 3 hours without moving, without thinking, without feeling anything at all. The room was exactly the same as it had always been. My furniture was the same. My walls were the same color. My photographs were still on the mantel. But everything had changed. The world had revealed itself to be a different place than I thought it was. My son had tried to hurt me. My son and my other son had conspired to make me suffer. They'd done it for money, for inheritance, for the chance to take what I'd spent my life building and make it theirs. The arrest happened the next morning. I watched the news coverage from my living room. Derek being led out of his office in handcuffs. His face blank, his eyes not meeting the cameras. Margot had called in advance to warn me it was coming. She'd taken a personal day from the hospital. She sat next to me on the couch while I watched my son being arrested on live television. I'm so sorry, she said. I'm so sorry this is happening. You didn't do this, I said. You're the one who stopped it. But I wasn't sure that was entirely true. Margot had stopped it from getting worse, but she hadn't prevented it from happening in the first place. She hadn't known about the conspiracy until it was almost too late. If I'd continued using that cream for another month, another 2 months, what would have happened? How much worse would the damage to my skin have been? How much more of my health would I have lost? Marcus turned himself into police 3 days later. He'd hired a lawyer. The lawyer advised him to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Marcus agreed to testify against Derek in exchange for immunity from the conspiracy charges. He claimed Derek had been the mastermind, that Derek had come to him with the plan, that Marcus had only participated because Derek was his older brother and he'd felt obligated. I didn't believe him, not entirely, but it didn't matter what I believed. What mattered was what the evidence showed, and the evidence showed that both of my sons had conspired to hurt me for money. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I had to testify. I had to sit in a courtroom and describe how my hands had burned, how my pain had increased, how I'd assumed my condition was getting worse when really I was being poisoned by my own sons. Derek's lawyer tried to suggest that maybe I'd accidentally purchased the wrong cream, that maybe there was a mix-up at the store. But the security footage was clear. Derek had bought the chemicals deliberately. He'd purchased them with cash. He'd gone to the hardware store specifically to buy them. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict on all counts. Attempted assault with a caustic substance, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Marcus, having cooperated with the prosecution, received 3 years. I sat in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I felt empty, like someone had reached inside me and removed all the parts that made me capable of feeling anything at all. After the trial ended, I had to figure out how to live in the world again, how to exist in a house that had been violated, how to trust anyone ever again. The damage to my hands from the chemicals was permanent. Dr. Morrison said the scarring would fade over time, but my skin would never be completely normal. I would always have marks, physical evidence of what my sons had done to me. I changed my locks. I installed a security system. I removed Derek and Marcus from my will entirely. I left everything to charity, to organizations that helped abused elderly people, to research into arthritis treatment, to causes that meant something to me. My sons would get nothing. Margot came to see me regularly. She brought groceries. She helped me with household tasks that my damaged hands made difficult. She never said, "I told you so." She never made me feel foolish for not seeing what my sons were doing. She just showed up and helped. She became the family I thought I had, but never actually did. 6 months after the trial, I sold my house. I couldn't live there anymore. Every room held the memory of what had happened inside those walls. Every corner was contaminated by the knowledge that my own sons had poisoned me in that space. I bought a smaller condo in a different neighborhood, a place with no history, no ghosts. 2 years passed. Derek was in prison. Marcus was in prison. I was rebuilding my life. My hands had healed as much as they were going to heal. The scars remained, but they were fainter now. I could use my hands almost normally again. Almost. I started volunteering at a local senior center. I helped other elderly people navigate legal issues. I helped them understand their rights. I helped them recognize the signs of elder abuse. Because I'd learned something through my experience. I'd learned that family doesn't automatically mean safe. That blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. That the people closest to you can be the ones most willing to hurt you. One afternoon, a woman came into the senior center. She was in her 70s. She looked exhausted, frightened. She told me that her son had been pressuring her to change her will, that he'd been acting strange, that she wasn't sure if she could trust him anymore. I sat with her for 2 hours. I listened to her story. I told her mine. I gave her the phone number for Detective Simmons. I told her to trust her instincts, to protect herself, to assume nothing. "But he's my son," she said. "Surely he wouldn't hurt me." "That's what I thought too," I told her. And I was wrong. Today, 5 years after the day Margot discovered what was in that jar, I live a quiet life. I'm retired. I volunteer 3 days a week. I have friends who check on me. I have Margot, who became the daughter I never had. I have a sister-in-law, Vivienne, who stopped by regularly once she understood what had happened. I have a life that's smaller than it used to be, but it's real. It's honest. It's built on people I can actually trust. Derek will be released from prison in 3 years. Marcus will be released in 1 year. I've made peace with the fact that they'll be out in the world again. I've made peace with the fact that I can't control what they do or who they become. I can only control what I do, how I live, who I let into my life. The scars on my hands have faded to almost nothing. Most people don't notice them anymore, but I do. Every time I look at my hands, I remember. I remember the burning. I remember the betrayal. I remember the moment I realized that the people I loved most were willing to hurt me for money. And I remember that I survived, that I recognized the danger, that I protected myself, that I built a new life from the ashes of the old one. That's what matters now. Not what my sons did, but what I did after, how I chose to live, how I chose to help others, how I chose to move forward. If you're worried about someone in your life, trust that instinct. If something feels wrong, investigate. If you're being hurt by someone you love, reach out for help. You don't have to suffer in silence. Hit follow if this hit close to home.